Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. I am excited to be joined by Tina Zwolinski, who is the CEO and founder of skillsgapp. Tina is a truly extraordinary person who is passionate about connecting students with careers through gamification. I think in our pre-meeting before the podcast, we had a great conversation, and it's just kind of a different outlook on things and really a kind of a truly fresh perspective. So excited to have you here today, Tina. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be with you too, just to have this conversation for the next hour and just to get into what everybody is feeling the pain of, the workforce, and the excitement of it too with this generation that has so much potential. So this will be a good conversation today.
I agree. I'm excited to dive in. Before we dive too far into that side, I want to learn a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am the CEO and co-founder of skillsgapp, which you shared. We launched in 2020, and it is a workforce development initiative that uses gaming as the tool to recruit youth. And so our product side of the company is called Skillionaire Games. Who doesn't want to be a skillionaire? So it's really fun. I had a branding and marketing firm for 25 years, and we focused on economic development and workforce and youth brands. And every year we just saw this disconnect. Really, we went through millennials and then getting into Gen Z and really seeing an opportunity to connect better from careers into, from learning about careers into careers, and that opportunity there, especially with the way Gen Z learns. And we'll get into that on this podcast today. So that background really led to just a little bit about my family. The branding and marketing firm was Zwo. We worked with nonprofits, with youth brands as part of the youth marketing that we did. We would go into rural areas that were near large manufacturers and free education, and just seeing that disconnect of the youth. And same with the inner city near our office. The same, the youth not getting connected to the careers or knowing that they had a free education up the street, and some opportunities that existed to break cycles and to do really well. And then it was my own son who was adopted, and he loves cars. So he's probably listening to this podcast and mortified that his mother's talking about him. But he would have been the perfect student to go through automotive CTE and then on. And it was that journey with him after high school that was that moment of, we have got to do something meaningful. And so launched out of that company into this work. So I'm excited to be talking about the impact that my son could have had in automotive, and to be able to share with your listeners about thinking differently about Gen Z and how to recruit them.
So let's define Gen Z. Who are we talking to?
So Gen Z, they were born 97 through 2012. So if you think of middle schoolers, high schoolers, really those entering the workforce right now up through 24. So they're the incoming workforce, digital native. They learn from, they watch YouTube videos, they watch, TikTok, and they're learning that way. My son built a car engine from a YouTube video. So
that is so cool.
It's fun to watch this generation and how they learn.
And we'll dive into some of the gamification, but I'm curious as to what you've learned over kind of your years of experience as to how you communicate with a young person. And the reason I asked that is I spoke to a group of 8th graders a couple months ago, and this is how I officially know that I've entered like the middle ages of my life, is that I felt so uncomfortable and so much like a fish out of water that it was a challenge, and it was more, me not wanting to sound stupid or boring, and them, I'm not sure if they were listening or if they were like, okay, I just got to get through this guy's presentation so that I can move on to the next thing. So I'm curious what you've learned over your years of experience as to how you approach those types of conversations.
Yeah, really authenticity. I am sure, Jay, that they loved hearing from you, because you are talking about cars, and there is a passion and a love for cars and the workforce that we've got to use different language with this generation. But authenticity, but then really thinking about the tools that this generation uses. I'm going to lift, and if you think of Gen Z, this is the visual that should come to mind. So they, 7+ hours a day, they're on their phone outside of schoolwork. And it's, their number one form of entertainment that is gaming. And after that is, streaming music, social media, but sports further down the line. And so this generation really engages differently. So thinking about where they are and what they love doing and going to them there is really important to capture their attention, to interrupt what they're doing and to be a part of, where they are. And so there's lots of opportunity there. And so for your listeners, and just thinking about maybe some traditional ways of where things have been websites in the past, and people have navigated those because that was the tools we would use. But now thinking about they're on their phones, and no matter the demographic or the economic stability of the family, 98% of Gen Z has a smartphone. And so that's just a real reality check of this is where they are. And so thinking about recruiting for this generation, thinking about ways to use, social media, even a lot of the auto influencers. This is a little story that I love. In my branding and marketing days, we would do a lot of fast casual food work. And there was one brand we worked with, and they were the perfect brand to have, the cars and coffee events where,
yeah, love them.
Love them. And you drive by and the kids line the streets, with their cameras, their phones, not cameras, phones, taking pictures of every car that leaves the event. And so there is that passion that's still there, but this brand was a perfect brand to have, like, if you brought your vintage car to the restaurant and give free shakes, it would attract the younger generation. And they wouldn't do it because they just felt like the kids did not like that. And so it was a big myth, especially when you go by and see this. So just really thinking about where that love is, where they are, and rethinking about ways that you recruit. And we can talk about, even education, because I know a lot of your listeners have programs that we could talk about too.
Yeah, and I'd love to dive more into that. The one thing that stuck out to me about what you just said was that when I was growing up, sports were everything to me, right? I loved sports, loved going and playing with my friends, and that's changed, it sounds like. It's more, we're in our phones or gaming, and really, I know I've got young family members that, that's how they interact with their friends. They're playing games and talking to their friends through the game itself. And it's just a completely different dynamic. And I think that might be a little bit of what made me feel so uncomfortable was really being able to put myself in that mindset, because I did not know that before you just said that sports had moved so far down the list. It's incredible to me that's happened. That transition has already happened.
Yeah. And you think about too, with this world that we're in, this generation, so everything is viewed digitally. And then they're coming off from COVID with learning digitally. So they've been in this screen world. The benefit of that, as far as training for, WyoTech or machinist, whatever, is that you can take them into this digital world and be able to capture them. And even things with the metaverse, wherever that ends up going, there's lots of training opportunities. And for us, being able to get youth into environments and gaming was really important, because if youth could see themselves in this job, whatever the job might be, there's a better opportunity to move them along that pipeline. And so being able to have kids in a shop in a digital world, you can easily create that and be able to get the kids to know that, I can do this. And then that connection to that next pathway in their process to get into that career. There's a lot of opportunity to, if you think about videos, they're great because they can show you things. It's visual. Kids are streaming videos, so that is happening. but you can't re-engage with youth, and they are a culture that likes to quickly put a comment in, and get feedback right away from a celebrity or an influencer. So that two-way engagement is a world that they love. And so when you think about how to recruit them into a technical college with a program, how can you have a two-way relationship? So thinking about technology on a mobile phone, whether it's social or gamification, there's so many ways to have that constant engagement happening.
So walk me through that part. Let's kind of move into what you mean by that in talking about how is it that we bring that to them? How is it that we give them those visuals and that kind of gratification of feedback immediately? I'm fascinated by what you have to say here with this.
Yeah. So if we think about it from a social media perspective, there is a lot of opportunity within commenting and just letting someone that is a Gen Z coming up into the workforce, that you care about them, that what they think matters. It is amazing how much a like or a comment can go a long way. It's really viewed, if they see regular reinforcement, it's a mentorship. Even though it seems to us like, oh, it's just a digital touch, it is truly a mentorship experience. And so when we get into, I'll use gaming, but there's other things that can happen with, texting or messaging and things like that. In our games, there's opportunity to send a message to a player to say, wow, we've noticed that what you're doing is really great. You can learn more about what you're playing at a local technical college that's right up the street from you. Or we have apprenticeships at local body shops that we would love, since you're already showing interest, come find out about it in person. So now they can go from where they're just trying careers on to actually coming in person from a connection. And now you meet them in the real world, so they see where it comes to life. And so there's that relationship building that takes a little bit of time, but the payoff in the end is that you've got students now that have a relationship with you. So there's a little more loyalty connection, which can mean less turnover in the future. And that when they come to you, that there's already a known interest, like they know what you're doing. You're identifying with their culture and what they like. So they like the fact that you're meeting them in the workforce culturally. And so there's real opportunity with Gen Z that I believe can be longevity in careers where maybe the generation previous is more apt to jump around.
And it sounds like that's kind of almost like a bridge from almost their world to our world, right? Where you're meeting them where they're at, as you mentioned before, and then kind of bringing them comfortably into your world. So it's not such a rough transition to where if they're used to communicating online and maybe not as much face to face, I think, I hear that from a lot of shops and a lot of schools, tech schools, that talk about that and how uncomfortable that person can be coming into our place of work or into our school, because there is an additional element of human interaction that maybe they're not as exposed to anymore.
Yeah, those soft skills are everything. And when they've been in that is a challenge in how to get the communication going. If there's a comfort level and that respect built, that can come along. But this generation, really, from being digital, especially with being home a lot, there's some catch-up work on the soft skills. Our games that we have for the industries that we're in, we do build in some soft skills for communication, for teamwork.
Oh, cool.
And learning how to work through difficult conversations. So that's part of the work experience and just that respect for each other. But that is something when you're building those relationships like that we were talking about before, that you can have those talks with the students and help really, if they're coming into your workforce, really coming alongside them and showing them what those conversations look like and helping them with training and those soft skills development on the job. And then it's okay to fail and it's okay to be wrong. And that's part of the process. So they don't feel that intimidation of, I'm going to fail. It really is, no, it's part of learning, and we want you to fail. And then we want to talk about what went wrong and, and be able to have that two-way conversation respectfully.
Well, and I think that's a good time for them to fail too, right? And not that we don't fail. I think at some level we all fail at least daily, right? At something, something doesn't go our way at some point over the course of the day, but getting them in the mindset that you can do that. And I think so many times with young people, in my experience, it has been a lot of times they're the hardest on themselves, right? Like they beat themselves up, and to the point to where there's not a lot of confidence there, and it hurts them. But if you kind of embrace that level of thinking in terms of, hey, you can fail. It's all right. Like we'll get you. Well, this is how you learn. This is how we build you up. I think that paradigm shift in general can kind of provide that security blanket that maybe they look for.
Yeah, I agree. Like just that learning, that it's a learning environment, that everybody's learning no matter what your level, and ask questions. We'll take time to come alongside you and show you how to do it. And it's okay to say, I don't know, but that will help in that communication and that, just opening the door up for someone wanting to grow. And then again, knowing that that company poured into them and took the time with them to help them grow. And either, if they wanted to move up into management, that they knew that that pathway was there, and it's really important for Gen Z, and keeping Gen Z at your company is that they have that mentorship. So that's why I am sharing about even starting earlier through a digital relationship into the workplace, that this generation wants to be mentored. And if they feel that that's that environment of growing and learning, you can get this generation to stay and grow with you.
Yeah. And I think the piece that is now I'm curious about is how you get the other side to kind of get that same grasp, right? So maybe you've got a baby boomer out there, or a Gen Xer, or now a millennial. Millennials are aging up. Like being able to get them to kind of embrace that side, and being able to, once that digital kind of relationship starts, how do you get them to embrace that digital relationship as well?
Yeah, it's, we're all stuck in our ways, aren't we?
To a fault.
It's hard to change. It's hilarious because I would spend so many hours telling my kids to get off the games and get outside, because that's what we did when we were growing up. And now I, ask them to test the games and play more. And but it is, for boomers, there's this wealth of information that they have that they're getting ready to take on with them out of the workforce. And so the challenge to them is the love that you have for what you're doing, that you can pass on down to this generation. And yes, you have to acknowledge that they are different. I think there can be frustration and like, well, they're on their phone, they check things, and I want them to put their phone down and work. Well, actually, they probably can get just as much done with that quick check on their phone, and let some things go. And so I think for boomers, and I'm bringing Gen X into this because I think that we're similar to boomers in some ways in being stuck in our ways, and I'm a Gen X, that just really, especially being a manager from my last branding and marketing firm and then into this company, is that you have to be flexible with the workforce and understanding how they work differently and trying some new things and being, sometimes it won't work. And just like we're talking about, we can fail too in that, but give it a shot. And also ask them, some ways that, what should we do differently around here? And it might be the outcome is more productive in the end. So I think knowing that we can learn from each other is really important. And for all of us that have businesses or are a part of a larger corporation, is asking those questions of, now that you've been here for a little bit, what do you see that maybe could work a little better, and try it. What harm could it be if it means that they're happier and will stay longer, and maybe more production happens and we're actually more profitable because of that. So I just say with the older generations, a little flexibility. And then as far as when your question about digital, like that reverse digital is, trying some of the tools that they use out enough to be dangerous, but, learning a little yourself on the side of what this generation is doing. There's a lot of great content out there that you can, if you don't play, I don't play games. I have a gaming company, but I understand the power of gamification versus listening to someone speak in front of a classroom. 6 times more recall than just listening to somebody.
I believe that.
And so just knowing the power of technology and what that can do. And then so when you're thinking about your marketing strategy for your company, you're aware of what's out there. You might be aware enough to be deadly with what you know, that it could be troublesome. But if you at least know what's happening out there and what this generation is using, you can at least be a part of the conversation of, well, why aren't we exploring this? Or why don't we try this? It could be a competitive advantage that really sets you apart in the industry. So I think learning what's out there and what Gen Z is doing so that you can at least be, have the knowledge of what to speak into to give some things a different approach.
And I totally agree. And I love the perspective of just asking, right? And talking through it and, asking to understand rather than just asking, right? Like, and I think listening to understand.
Listening, it's a good word. Yep.
Listening is such a key point. And I think it's scary for a lot of people, especially even for me, when you think about those younger generations and trying to engage them in a way that will produce that loyalty. A lot of times, a lot of these shops that we work with are looking for that younger person to come in. And if you've got young people that are already working for you, what better way to understand what a good workplace looks like than to ask them and see how the shop looks through their eyes, because it might be a completely different thing than what you see.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And it could be a really, really good thing for the future. And then if you just think about this industry in general on how it's moving to technology, robotics, software, well, that's what these kids know. And so boomers and all Gen X, there's a lot to learn there. So really coming together could be a benefit for where the industry is going to. So I love the listening and just the ideas that can come from that.
We just launched our new weekly game on Shop Talk, The Loneliest Number. Each week, we will post short poll questions on Shop Talk about industry topics. Technicians who answer the questions will earn points to play the game and get a chance to win our $1,000 weekly prize. $500 will go to the lucky winner, and the other $500 will go to a local high school program picked by the winner. Start playing now at WrenchWay.com/ShopTalk. Link is in the show notes.
Now, another very scary thing for people, I think, is when you say gamification, and people are probably thinking like, well, what kind of wizardry is this? What is gamification, and why is it so effective?
And probably a lot of your listeners are gamers and don't even realize it. Wouldn't call themselves, because they think it's sitting down with an Xbox and in a dark room for hours or in your parents' basement. But actually, even so, a lot of the little games like Candy Crush or Pokemon Go, or there's just a lot of quick games that people jump into and might play for 5 to 10 minutes, and then they're on their way. It's when they're sitting waiting at a doctor or something, and they're in their car. So it's real quick. But if you look at even workouts now, there's lots of, awards and stars and challenges. And so everything in our lives is moving to a gamification, reward-based even a lot of work apps that we use from Zoom, even looking at some things that they're doing. So we're going to see that if you look at the growth of gamification over the next couple of years, just the growth is unbelievable. But I think the reason that we're seeing that growth is because you really get to, for gamification, I'll just talk about some things that are exciting about it, is that you get to get into a world and do something different than you're used to. So for us, it was about, our games are in aerospace, automotive, life sciences. These are areas that students never hear about in school because it's hard to learn what's happening with trends and careers. So if you can get them into this world and now they get to do all these things, and it's a safe environment for failure to happen and to try different things and be okay, because you're not in a room full of people that you're going to feel like you look foolish or you're not appearing to be smart. In these worlds, you can have that experience and then discover that, oh, what I just did there, I really like what I see in aerospace and working with drones. And so now it gives me the confidence to be in an environment at my school to mention, I've been learning about drones and this type of a job and that they pay this much. And so I can bring that up to a guidance counselor. So for gamification in the world of your listeners, you can think of it as opportunities for even training. So if you have to think about they're coming into your workplace and there's some simple tasks that are repeatable, that there's lots of training where a person typically is in front of a room, thinking about it as a way of how can we look at, is there an opportunity to gamify something in that the trainee has to do repeated tasks and they get scores for it, but they can see improvements or rewards. And then you're getting that data on the back end and you could say, you know what, we're seeing they have strengths here and not so many strengths here. We brought them in for this, and the data is showing us that they're a real accurate person. They like detail. Perhaps we should move them more onto this side of the company. And then you get you get to keep them, but now you've moved them into a different role. So gamification, because of the data on the back end of gamification, it really opens up the world to looking at things deeper than just how you're interpreting it. It's sort of, yes, there's things that might not be 100% bankable, but it really gets you a little further on who's doing well, where are they struggling, where are they showing wins, where do we need to spend more time with them. So lots of opportunities in gamification. Can you think of an area in your life where you didn't expect it to be considered gamification and it is?
Oh, I think it's all over the place. And as you're talking about this, I just had a conversation with my wife's first cousin, who is a pilot for Delta. And he had just gotten into Delta probably a year ago, but he was a pilot for United prior to that, right? But part of their training at Delta was flight simulation for an extended period of time. They, different scenarios, how they handle that. And as he explained it, and as you're talking, I'm like, that's exactly what he went through. He went through a pretty intense flight simulation school where they're throwing different scenarios at you and they're training you how to operate when something doesn't go right. And, he actually, he had this gigantic bird when they were flying, it smoked the windshield, and he sent us a picture, and it had this huge, the glass was cracked all the way through on this gigantic airplane. And I'm like, man, how did you get through that? That seems like it would be terrifying. One, the reaction from a bird hitting you, hitting the windshield right in front of you, but then two, the fact that you have to continue flying and you've got a whole bunch of people on that plane. And he said, you know what? It's just in our training. That's like we are trained to address these situations and continue to fly. And we know, it's ingrained in their head as to what they're doing, and a lot of that is due to flight simulation. So, as you're talking, that reminds me so much of my conversation with him.
Yeah. Military's been using it for a long time and identifying where those strengths are. But even if you think about, do you use Waze when you're driving?
Yes, absolutely.
So even that is like you put your thing in.
Get a reward.
And then you're also like the special auto person, with a special icon. So there is that. You're driving around. You're like, I got to be that person to say that the cop is still there. But one thing about gaming too, I wanted to address, and this is important, especially now more than ever, when you think about diversity in the workforce. In gaming, you have avatars, and the fantastic thing about avatars is that it gives you the opportunity to pick who you want to be. So you take race and gender off the table because that they get to be who they are in those environments. And now they're seeing themselves in the environment. So when we think about a lot of the industries where we have got some work to do on diversity in the workforce, now these players get to see people that look like them running around, and they get to see themselves in these different roles as well. So gamification has also really removed a lot of bias and stigmas. So I'm going to just share the example from our game and why we did it, because we launched to be able to impact underserved youth and connecting them to career awareness and to access. And so now post-secondary schools can recruit players from our games. They could say, we have a life science program, we have an auto program, and anybody that's this age that has showed this interest, we want to let them know about our program. So now they come, or a company that has, a job that someone could come in right out of high school or whatever the age is. So you're recruiting based on interest and involvement and age, just because of a course or whatever. Now you've taken gender and race out of the mix. And so It really helps to, can we get more women into auto? I think so, especially with it being more tech generated and STEM based. And even looking at, I was looking at the stats on the industry, and, it's 3.6% women, 96.4% male, and then white 65, Hispanic 17, black just 10, and Asian about 5. So there's it's not a people problem. It's definitely an awareness and access challenge. And so there's lots of opportunities to really look at ways to embrace the youth. And so if you want to, I think about where, if your listeners are thinking about, think about where you are placing those ads right now, for recruitment. I know there's a lot of challenges with having to offer signing bonus, special costs, but you can't keep competing against the dollar. They're always going to leave for an extra dollar. So you've got to give them more reasons to stay. So think about, when you were asking earlier about what the digital ways, think about, is there something on YouTube that there's, something that generation is really involved in? Look on that's where you could put your ad versus somewhere else right now. Or even interrupting some things on social media. There's so much data now that you can find out if there's an interest in that, in auto work or whatever that might be, mechanic, painting. There's even lots of art skills where they love cars and they love art and they're just not aware that that's a career. So think about all the different places on a phone that you can reach these students. And that's where I would be looking to spend my money, but then also thinking about engagement. So you're thinking, I'm going to start mentoring them now in this digital world to build a long-term relationship with them. And you can invite them into your shops, things like that, into your companies, and just get them exposed to the different types of jobs that are in there, even if they come in for one, and then they find out, remember how we all had internships and you go in for one thing, and once you're in there, you get exposed to how it all connects together, and then it makes sense. But we can't wait that long anymore. You've got to get them earlier, capture that connectivity earlier to what they're doing and what the bigger picture is of it. They get it. This generation gets it.
Well, and I think there's so many stats that back up what you're saying. In really summarizing what those stats say is that the earlier you can get to them, the more likely they are to stay in your industry and maybe even with your brand. But I think the important part is being able to stay with it, stay consistent. I think one of the concerns that I've got about our industry is the consistency behind this, right? We get fired up and we're ready to go tackle this and do it. But then you start to see, oh, well, this ROI is not going to come for 5 or 6 years or 7 years. And it stops them from continuing to progress. But if you really turned it into the fact that, hey, you've got a talent pipeline that you're building, and once that starts to come through, you're going to be drastically better off, and it's not going to be an overnight ROI on that, but it can help you exponentially. If you plan on being in this career, I'm speaking to those managers out there, if you plan on being in this for a long time, I don't know that if you act the same way as you always have, that anything's going to change. Like, it's just always going to be difficult to find people. But this is a great opportunity to get out in front of it, provide some education, provide some awareness to who you are, so that when they do come through the school system and they're ready to kind of select what their career is, they can say, hey, you know what? That's a pretty cool spot. And as electrification of vehicles comes, as the technology explodes as it is right now, it seems like something's changing. I've said it feels like this is the new tech space, right? Like, it just keeps changing by the day. And that plays right into that hand of that gamification and technology in general and where our industry is going.
You hit on it exactly, Jay. The pain that everybody's feeling day to day, month to month. I mean, I've had 2 flat tires in the last month, and where I get my tires replaced, they're like, we're not open today because we don't have the workforce, so we close now on this day. And it's like, what? And so having to scale back or having to take longer for repairs it's loss of profitability for your listeners. And so, to your point of that pain of, like, we need immediate fixes. Well, there's not an immediate fix right now. The immediate fix is go a couple years back. And we're even talking 1 year, seniors. And so when you think about a middle schooler is a key age because they dream and they can put the dots together of, oh, I want to do that one day, but I need a science class. So if we can capture them in middle school, you can actually set them up to make choices for high school. Because once they make a choice for high school, they're in it. They're locked in a pathway. Yeah. And if they had known that there's some things with cars that also align with some technology that they like, or the creativity in paint and art, then they could have taken a CTE program that could have dramatically changed their life and the employer, the work, the industry's life. So if you think about the high schoolers, they have to make choices about where they're going to go afterwards for, post-secondary, or if they're even going to continue on. So if you can, capture them there too, it can change their pathway. So CTE programs, being involved middle school and high school, although, to your point, Jay, people think that's so far out. It really isn't. Time goes by quickly. And there's a ripple effect. When a student's excited about something, they go home and tell a parent, and a parent can actually be reskilled and maybe not have known that there was an opportunity in a career and that you can make $125,000 in this industry after a couple of years. And you could be doing what you love and making that. And so really looking at opportunities, if you think like offline digital connection, the schools and the teachers are craving industry to be involved. There was a survey that was done. It was by I'm trying to think of the other group that did it. But it was done in 2020, and it was for Gen Z. What could make education better? What was the number one way? And overwhelmingly, the students said to have industry involved in our learning so that we're learning from those that are doing and they can tell us the trends that are happening out there. That would make education more exciting for us. And so to your listeners, get in touch with the local, not just technical college, because the truth is the students still are not learning about the connection between high school and technical college. So if you can get them in high school and even middle school and be able to share with the CTE programs or even in front of a class at a time, that connection of the connecting the dots for them can be a help. And then, fueling it with digital, and you can even say at that point, follow this and be a part of this, or how can we follow you? So there's exciting opportunities there to really get where we have a day where workforce is not the conversation every single year of what are we going to do? Well, what can we do for signing bonuses? That cannot be the norm. It's not sustainable, but investing in that future generation can provide a sustainable, thriving future workforce.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Wrench. At this time, we would like to take a moment to highlight this episode's sponsor, WyoTech. WyoTech is one of the nation's leading automotive, collision, and diesel training schools found in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. With hands-on training 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, their graduates are career-ready in 9 months. WyoTech offers 3 core programs in automotive, diesel, and collision. WyoTech also offers 6 specialty programs in high-performance powertrains, trim and upholstery, advanced diesel, applied service management, street rod, and chassis fabrication. Countless opportunities for students to work with their hands, never online. Check out WyoTech in Laramie, Wyoming by visiting wyotech.edu. WyoTech starts students 4 times a year, allowing many opportunities for students to start their career in the trades. America is built on the trades and needs skilled technicians now. WyoTech is the place to get the training you need for the jobs America needs today. Know your brand, forge your path. wyotech.edu.
You mentioned something that stuck out to me around career pathing in high school. And I feel like that's changed a lot since I was in high school, 20-something years ago. That wasn't quite there, or maybe it was, but the structure wasn't even close to what it is now, to where they truly are. And I was just going through this exercise with our local high school here, and they are choosing a path that early in their life. And the need to get in with 8th graders is huge right now. And as that continues to go, because what they're trying to do is make sure the classes align with what the students' interests are so that they can set them up for success once they're out of school, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're having them select what interests them most so that they can kind of go down that path. I don't know that our industry has a firm understanding of that. They're choosing that early on in life. And that if you're not out in front of that, it's going to continue to be a struggle.
Yeah, so it's 4-year, and you pick it now. And middle schoolers they see nurses, they see business, doctors, not so much nurses, I'm going to say, because we need a lot of nurses right now.
Yeah, we do.
But so think about how many careers they know about at that stage. Not a lot, especially the way cyber jobs, there's 700,000 jobs. You can get $90,000 a year just getting a certificate. No further education out of high school. The kids don't know that in middle school. So, if they're aware of where the auto industry is going in middle school, spending that time there, 4 years goes like that. And so you could get these kids excited about what's happening in auto and, yes, it's going a lot to EV, but there's still going to be traditional, and there's those that love working on
for
that.
For a long time.
And there's also those that love technology and where things are going, or even care, they're very social conscious, generation, that some of them will really want to be a part of that EV. And so if your corporation is focused on that, there's a tremendous opportunity to capture different, those generations. But to your point, Jay, going and really focusing on middle school is key, because you make that decision and you are locked into that pathway. And so after that, it's just sort of hearing some things, but you're not really aware of it. But there's a tremendous opportunity to get them at that age when they're creative and can dream big and get excited. And so then when they hear science or math or CTE, it takes the stigmas out earlier, so they're not fed them from somewhere else. In this generation, if you get them on digital, if you can excite them, then we don't have to think about, is there a stigma with a technical college? Is there a stigma that they're dirty jobs? They're already in love with it, so they're on their way. And so now the parents are, hearing from their kids, I want to do this. This is exciting. Instead of like, no, we don't want to consider that pathway. So let's just get in our high school, career pathway and go for 4 year. And if not that, then we'll figure out something later. But that's where we're all headed. I was reading a lot of blogs and preparing for today with talking to the industry. And what I love reading are comments in blogs, because you get people all worked up and they're always fun. It's on Twitter. It's very fun and entertaining. But reading through a lot of the workforce blogs on this industry, all below is, nobody knows about the technical college and what's available. There's the stigmas around it. And that was really what raised to the surface in those conversations. And so, being able to have those conversations earlier that all these pathways are equal and good. It's what's great for you and what do you love. And the pay is there, and some people, they just do it because they love it, and the pay may not be great, but you love what you're doing. But the students do need to be aware that you can go into this career and you can do really well and own your own company and grow up in a company. And if you need further education, the company will pay for it. You stay with them and you're helping them. Then there's lots of opportunities that we are missing in that conversation. And part of this with your podcast, I think that the good that comes from this too is you have all the different generations on here listening and have youth or are involved in doing some of these things already, to be able to make sure that we are creating awareness. But then also that next step is the access. Like how do we get the youth into these careers and letting them know what those pathways. There's 2 million Gen Z, or there's 2 billion, not million, Gen Zers. So if you think about how many jobs are open, I actually have a statistic here. Let me pull that up. The auto tech. So they're saying that the demand in your industry is really like a 5 to 1. Like it's grown significantly. And for auto tech, I was looking at 2020. There was 136,503. 1 year, it doubled to 2021. So that doesn't even have 2022, which I am sure more than doubled. And then what we're looking at going into 2023. So the youth are out there and the diversity is out there. I think letting these kids know that you can have success here and you can fail and try again and grow here, that really looking at that culture, what you're offering, and being committed to, several years out, but the pay, the outcome of that is significant for your business. It can be really exciting for you too, and how that industry grows.
Well, and I feel like that gives you a little bit more confidence, and that that you're tackling this thing in a little bit more proactive way. Mm-hmm. One of the things, as we were talking, that I thought about was something that an educator had told me a while back, and I thought it was really fascinating, which is it's as important to learn for that student, that young person, to learn what they don't want to do as much as what they want to do. And because what happens is if they don't have exposure to that at a young age, they end up going down a path that maybe they don't love, right? And I know, we could all talk about there's plenty of people that went to even for their bachelor's degree, went for something that they're not working in that field.
Yeah.
And they spend a lot of time and money in a subject that they're not working in. And you wonder how much benefit is there when that kid in school has an idea of what they truly want to do rather than what they think they want to do. And really just to their happiness at their core, like when they get out and when they're working, they've seen different things, and maybe they make a better decision on their education based on that. I think there's a ton of value in that side too.
Yeah. So Jay, do you know that for the youth right now, when you ask them what career they want to be, what one of the number one responses is right now?
YouTuber, maybe.
Yeah, influencer. So it's, and so that's what they see because it's where they are. What they're not putting together is that's about a 24-hour career, that can pay really well for about a month until the next influencer comes along. But, they're not seeing those dots. They see, that's where they are. They're on their phones once again. And so they see these people that they love what they're doing and they're successful. And for that moment and window of time, they're connected to that person. And so it goes back to the start of our conversation. We've come full circle at the end that they see it. They're a part of it. They can engage with that influencer, and that influencer responds to them in a chat or whatever. And so now they're connected to that community. So all of a sudden, it seems like the best thing in the world. People love you, and you make money doing it. But they need to be aware that they also need a backup plan after they're not so famous anymore. So, but it goes back to, what they see, where they are, and who is taking time to care about responding to them, engaging with them. So I think the takeaway from today is to really look at some ways that your business can do that, and then know that this generation, with gamification, it provides opportunities for training. It provides opportunities to help them go along the pathway. And it's just for entertainment wise, where things are going, considering little things that you can do and be a part of it. Even Blizzard, I got an email from them today that now they're doing these opportunities for companies, like they had Oreo ice cream. I can't remember which brand it was, but they could do a little mini game for you, and it's all branded, and it comes up in the middle of one of the other games. And then you can put your offer at the end. So even now, the ads are moving to gamification. So it's truly something to start thinking about. And just for your listeners, just kind of Google in and dig around and pay attention. Can do some research for Gen Z, and just thinking about how you're doing business and recruiting your workforce and some ways to engage differently.
It's funny because we've got some element to gamification with our company as well, right? We've got this loneliest number game. It's in our app, and basically people just pick the lowest number. Whoever picks the lowest number that week that nobody else picks, they win a prize, right? And it's been fun because there's not a whole lot of skill involved. You can try to game the system, but there's not like it's basically just whoever chooses the lowest number without anybody else choosing it. I keep waiting for somebody to select one and nobody else picks it, but it hasn't happened yet.
I'll do it. Yeah. See, so Joe, you're using gamification.
It is fun.
It's like, is it Wordle? I'm horrible because I do not play Scrabble because I am not a word person. But it's the same thing. Every night, I have got a friend that cannot go to bed, and then she's all worked up if she can't get it right. But it's that feeling of
that's classic example. Wordle. We had all kinds of people in our office playing Wordle and we're obsessed with it. And I did not even try it because I was like, the last thing I need is one other thing to do, but I knew it would be fun too, and I didn't want to go down that route.
But that's gamification right there. Just when people think like, oh, I don't play games. If you're doing that at night, go ahead and say you're a gamer.
Yeah. Well, speaking of games, let's learn a little bit about your game and specific to our audience, like, what does it look like? How does it work? Like, what when that young person goes in, what is it that they're seeing?
So we, our Skillionaire games, we have 10 different industry games. Each of them have some soft skills built into it. So we create, what we'd like to do is introduce the player within each industry to careers sort of from in the door to out the door. So for automotive, we're actually developing now an EV game just because of where things are going. So I'm going to talk about this for your listeners, although myself am a classic car 1959 light blue Corvette girl. So that's my dream. That's my dream car.
I love that car. Yeah, that exact style.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. So the students can come in. They, again, pick their avatar so they can be themselves. They get into the environments, and we go from manufacturing, R&D, into the battery manufacturing and recycling of batteries, all the way to charging stations and the growth of that career, like assembly and all of that. So when the students are in these environments, they actually get served many different careers. So they're like, what you just did there is called this, and you can get paid that much. We wanted to go a step further in what our company is doing and using the geolocation of the phones to actually serve that connectivity of access. So now when the students play it, you learn there's a company right up the street, Goodyear, and they're doing this right there. And that's, 5 miles from your house. Or this technical college has a program that is offering what you just did there. So you can go and click on their link later, so it really immediately connects the students to those opportunities that are around them. And like I shared before, you can actually recruit the players too. So it's location based, it's local. We partner with states and regions so that we're really creating that workforce, doing that relationship building so that they stay in the regions. They don't have to move away. They can if they want, but they have family around. Let's get them, set up for success. And so for us, we have cybersecurity, aerospace, automotive, life science, health science, advanced manufacturing, agriculture, the skilled trades, and the ever elusive soft skills, which after talking to so many people all of our games have soft skills built in. They earn badges throughout play. And so it really does help to show that they've invested time and had some outcomes that they've needed to achieve to receive those badges. We're actually working now with industries to actually have that become a stackable credential so it can take them from a stage in gameplay to actually move on to like technical college or industry-based credential. But it's all about getting the kids into these careers and a lot of these youth ending and breaking cycles so that they're set up for success and, generational success moving forward for careers where they may not have been aware of that and that it was right around them. So we're excited. We have, we launched in 20, like I started at the beginning of this talk. 21, we finished out our frameworks. We still have a few that we're working on with the EV and all of that. But in 22, we launched our life science, our cyber, our soft skills is launching. And so all we do is really take it off the shelf for a specific region, and then we go in and we customize that experience. But all throughout the gameplay is that what we talked about, that engagement, the break room, and the challenge of you need to check in. There comes the work ethic, and do your part in this challenge this week because we need you. In health science, your patient needs you to make sure that they get their prescription in and it's ordered and that you've done your job and put it through. And so it really is learning your part in a career and how all the things around depend on you and success. So we're single player, although there are other characters in the game, so you have teamwork and all of that. We're really for the one and helping to really guide them along in these safe environments for failure. So it's exciting. It is. We're excited for what's ahead, and hopefully with some of with the people listening here, that with the auto we'll all cross paths at some time and be able to really impact your workforce for years to come. generations to come.
I think it will, and I think what you're doing is amazing. For those of you, our audience that are interested in learning more about you or the company, how should they get in touch with you?
So they can go to skillsgapp, and that's with 2 P's. It's app, the play on that.
Nice.
So there comes our marketing background. And so they could go to the website. LinkedIn is really the best place to just follow updates and what's happening, just more of the industry connection. And just even picking up some things that are working with youth. We share Gen Z content. You can follow myself, Zwolinski. And I know you'll have something on that in the podcast, and or reach out if you have any questions. I'm also happy to throw ideas your way of if there's a challenge you're struggling with, or you have something that you are like, I wonder if this could be gamified. I'm happy to share. We're all learning together and can learn from each other. So please engage, and let's see what we can do together to help this workforce really grow and thrive.
Such a cool thing that you're doing. It's intriguing conceptually. It is just awesome. I think it helps bridge the gap for folks like me to be able to understand how you interact with the younger generations, and just all in all, a great idea. And so happy to see you doing so well with it, and genuinely look forward to following you along and seeing your journey and how this ends up. It's fascinating.
Thank you. I love following each other. The work that you have too, between the connection of schools, jobs, and all of that. We're very similar, like-minded in our mission. So it's been an honor to spend this time with you and getting to know you too.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot today, and some of it, I think going into it almost felt over my head a little bit, and I think you were able to simplify it for me. And hopefully the next time I go talk to the 8th grade class, I'll have a little bit better idea of how to relate it to them. So I appreciate it. Yeah,
absolutely. Pull up Kahoot and have challenges in Kahoot when you do that again, and you'll find
that's a great idea.
The kids will love that. So even to your listeners, if you go in, do some things with Kahoot. It's an app, and that schools use it and kids use it, and there's a gamification freebie for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate everything, and look forward to the next time we're able to talk.
Great. Thank you, Jay.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.